On this season of Destination Earth, Akane and I take to Canada's smallest province of Prince Edward Island. PEI is known for many things, including sandy beaches, red cliffs, and being a land full of potatoes. As we explore this amazing province, we'll show you everything from the main city of Charlottetown to the stunning landscapes of Prince Edward Island National Park. Where are we off to today? Let's find out. Now I have to admit, when we were planning our trip to this fort, I had no idea how to pronounce its name. I was simply calling it Fort Amherst. Little by little, the Mi'kmaq terminology and name for things have been slowly working their way back into Canada. And this is a way to help rectify some of the ways that the Indigenous communities were treated in the past and the present. Now, fortunately for us, the knowledgeable staff at Parks Canada Visitor Center did tell us how to pronounce it properly, and it's called Skmaqn, meaning the waiting place. As we approached the visitor center, we saw the flag at half-mast. Unfortunately, this is the perfect segue to talk about the mistreatment of our Indigenous communities and the members within them who have experienced things in the past. Shortly before this video was filmed, the bodies of 215 Indigenous children were found at, quote, Indigenous residential schools, in unmarked graves on the school grounds. These schools were ran by the government and the Catholic Church. Between the years of 1894 and 1947, children from Indigenous communities were collected by the federal police and workers and taken to these government-run Indian schools to essentially strip them from their language, culture, and families, and to instill a better way of life by turning them to Christianity, forcing them to speak English, and transforming into acceptable Canadian citizens. As someone who isn't a parent, I can't even begin to fathom what it would be like to have your child ripped from your hands and taken to a place where you don't know what's going to happen. Because the reality is, chances are that when your children come home, if they do come home, they will have been taught to hate your community, hate your background and your heritage, and probably will have nothing to do with you. Now, I am proud to be Canadian, but this is something that is so shameful that it upsets me that it happened here. And the government is trying to make amends for that, and one of the ways they want to do that is by introducing Indigenous terminology into the things that we do. And then they've also recently created a holiday, but I don't understand how this is going to be really effective when we have hundreds and thousands of Indigenous community members who don't have access to fresh water, to proper education, proper health care, proper psychological care. It almost feels as though it's more of a publicity than it is an actual aid. Now, I'm not the type of person who puts myself out there on the front lines and talks about this sort of stuff, but it is something that is prevalent right now, as it has been for a long time. And I do want to let you know, if you are a member of this community, that although I'm not out there on the front lines, I do sympathize with you, and I am a supporter. And with this, we headed into the National Historic Site, a place known for being a meeting place between the local Indigenous communities and the French settlers coming from Nova Scotia. The first European settlement on Prince Edward Island, or Ile Saint-Jean in French, was created by the French citizens when they realized they needed a trading post in the area. In 1720, they established Port-la-Joye right here. The trading community in the area began to grow as French loyalists and Acadians migrated from mainland Nova Scotia, following the potential wealth linked with trading. By 1725, French military and government officials arrived and began to establish a permanent colony. The colony was dominated by fishers and farmers, bringing in the fruits of the land and the sea to be traded. As perhaps expected, the Catholic Church became a focal point in the community. It provided residents a way to engage with the religious leadership and have access to centers of authority from France and Rome. Although religion played a negative role in the lives of the indigenous community, it did serve as a significant historical aspect, requiring people to have strict records of baptisms, marriages, and funerals. This information has helped us peer into the past and get a greater sense of the life in these early communities. Located on the grounds are an example of a traditional Mi'kmaq homestead. Now this is a sentiment we needed to stop and explore. So these buildings are called a wigwam, and this is a traditional Mi'kmaq house. And as you can see, it's built with birch bark, which is absolutely amazing. And then they use different types of gum in order to patch it together so the rain doesn't get in. We're going to go inside and see how cozy of a fit it is. So inside, they would have had a central fire pit with an open top to allow the smoke to escape. Now, as you can imagine, there wouldn't be a lot of room to sleep, but for a close-knit family like the ones that they had, this was the perfect sleeping solution. For more than 10,000 years, the ancestors of the Mi'kmaq have lived on this island. They called it the land lying in the waters. The entire island was their home, and they moved about it with the rhythm of the seasons. Inland, winter camps gave way to summer settlements by the coast, as their families followed the resources from the land and the sea. The best places to find food and fresh water was where camps were established. Between the years of 1726 to 1758, the Mi'kmaq came to Port La Joye to renew a shared alliance with the French who established the colony here. These annual gatherings included a feast, speeches, and an exchange of gifts as a means to confirm the ties between the nations. Earlier, we learned that Skmaqn meant waiting place. It was often the case that the local Mi'kmaq community was forced into waiting for the leaders of the French communities as they made the journey from their central fort in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, to this small settlement in Prince Edward Island. Having to deal with bad weather and a long, difficult route around the province, a timely arrival wasn't always in the cards. The Mi'kmaq waited patiently to welcome their guests and renew their alliance. Now the entire park is filled with a series of trails. Now you can walk or hike as much or as little as you want. We chose to do as much as we could, but most of the views are located along the shore. During our walks, we stumbled upon the Red Chairs of Canada. Of course, that's one of our favorite places to spend some time when we go to one of our national parks or historic sites, as they're located in some of the most scenic parts of the park. This case wasn't any different. We set up, overlooked a view of the city, and just relaxed, took in the sun, and enjoyed the views. As we sat, we read about the continual battle for control of the New World by the French, who were established here, and the British, who wanted the land for themselves. Things were back and forth over the course of the next 25 years, with the two countries exchanging hands on who controlled what and where. Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Rollo arrived on the island with a force of 500 soldiers and took possession of the Port-la-Joye on behalf of the British on August 17, 1958. The French governor at Louisbourg in Nova Scotia had given up both Ile Royale and Ile Saint-Jean as he surrendered the main fortress in Louisbourg the month before. Soon after the British arrived, they built Fort Amherst, almost completely on top of the former French fort. It was here that they exercised military and political control over the island for the next 10 years, and changed its name from their friends Ile Saint-Jean to the English version of St. John's Island. In addition to the construction of the fort, they also deported the Acadians from the land, forcing them to flee the area. Of the 4,600 inhabitants, 3,000 were deported back to France, with about half of them dying on the journey from either disease or drowning. About 1,100 Acadians escaped, fleeing to the nearby New Brunswick or Quebec. As we explored this former fort site, we saw nothing but mounds of earth. But these were the former cellars and a series of 8 buildings that were established in this space. Buildings included a commandant's office, officer quarters, a baker's house, a forge, a storage house, and a prison. Our National Historic Sites are really good at giving us a breakdown of what happened in Canada before it was Canada. I often wonder what it would have been like if France had won and taken over. Chances are I'd still be talking to you today, but it would likely be in French. Once we were done exploring this beautiful National Historic Site, we went back to our campground to plan for the next day. Now, we didn't have it then, but I do want to let you know, we've actually started our own lineup of camping gear. So Destination Earth is a company that Akane and I started, and we're going to be selling our own brand of camping gear beginning in the spring of 2022. We're going to be offering a 3-season sleeping bag and an ultralight chair to start. And unfortunately, this is only going to be available to residents of Canada. So if you're one of those, I encourage you to check out our stuff on our website at destinationearth.ca, or they're going to be available on Amazon as well. While we were back at camp, we began looking at what we want to do tomorrow, where we explore PEI's capital city of Charlottetown.